And I ended up in court, and the judge wanted to put me in jail for substance abuse or mental illness, either one. It was either substance abuse or I was mentally ill and I was a threat to society. So now I just laugh about that. It's not funny at all. I know it isn't, but just to think about my life, I was such a good person. I was that mom that made the cupcakes. I was
Donna, how did you find Carnivore?
Well, it was actually quite an accident. And back in when I started my journey, or I want to really call it a rebirth or a transformation, I never expected the benefits that I got from it. What happened was I had I had a seizure, and we didn't know what it was. It was back in 2000, I think it was 13 was my first seizure. That's what they call it. But my son had found me in my bathroom on the floor, and went to the emergency room, and it was a whole 20, 30 minutes of my life that I don't even remember. But before that happened, I'd been having headaches. I would wake up in the middle of the night, sweaty, confused. I was really very unhealthy and had been overweight my entire life. And when I mean entire life, I mean I can't find photos even as a child where I wasn't overweight. The lowest I can remember being as far as weight wise was 164 pounds before I started my ninth grade. And that was from a crash diet, and ninth grade in high school. And after that, you yo-yo diet, and we tend to gain more weight than we'd lost when we do that. So a lifetime of that kind of poor nutrition, eating the standard American diet. The highest weight that I had ever gotten that was recorded was 333 pounds. And I think that must be some kind of magic number. I don't know why, but that was back in 2000. At that time, my doctor had told me, listen, your blood pressure is high, your cholesterol is going to go through the roof. You're going to end up being diabetic if you don't do something about this. And at that time I was over 30 years old. I'm almost 60 now. I'll be 60 in just a few months. And I was so unhealthy. I did have what they call a gastric bypass surgery, and I was able to lose like 80 pounds really, really easy. So I could get down to 240, 220 if I starved myself. But man, I maxed out there, and then I would keep gaining weight again. So I'd go down to 220, and then I'd go up to 260. So that's kind of like where I stayed between 220, 260, maintain that weight for about a decade, maybe a little bit longer. Then I started having these episodes where I was, my mood would change. I would lose some sense of time. And those got worse until I had that seizure in 2013. And the doctor said, well, we can't find anything wrong with your brain, so it must be just a one off seizure. At that time, I was an accomplished occupational therapist working towards my doctorate degree, well, working towards getting into doctoral college with Boston University. I'd done 10 years of research on dementia and exercise as an occupational therapist. I was already a teacher of science and psychology for high school students. And I started having these moments of I didn't know where I was. I would drive past my house of 20 years and not recognize it. And things just became worse and worse. So the whole time, then I ended up losing my job, losing my house. I hadn't lost it yet, but I was on the verge of losing it. I was doing whatever I could to keep it, and ended up in court and ordered by a judge because I looked like, honestly, from 2013 when I had that first seizure, and was like I said, nobody really knew what it was. I declined, like mentally, cognitively, my mood changed. I was sleeping all the time. I had these horrible headaches. I started seeing and hearing things that weren't there. I thought I was crazy. And you know what? When you're crazy, you can't help yourself. Like a demented person you'd see on the street with dementia, you can talk to them all you want, but they're not going to reason with you. That was me. And I progressed down, down, down to just a terrible state. And I ended up in court, and the judge wanted to put me in jail for substance abuse or mental illness, either one. It was either substance abuse or I was mentally ill and I was a threat to society. So now I just laugh about that. It's not funny at all. I know it isn't, but just to think about my life, I was such a good person. I was that mom that made the cupcakes. I was the one that jolly, like chubby mom that always seemed happy. But there was like that underlying, anxiety and depression that most people kind of carry with them. And for me, that was definitely, excuse me, who I was. But I really went downhill. Of course, when you end up in court, they're not going to look at any of that. They're going to say, yeah, well, you had a fit in a Walmart parking lot. Well, yes, I did. But you know what? I really don't remember it. And you weren't very good to your coworkers sometimes. You were kind of like blah, 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 and doing things like, yep, you know what? I don't remember it. It wasn't like me at all. So anyway, she sent me out. I was in court with my son's father. My best friend, stood beside me the whole time. He said to the judge, listen, I've known this girl for over 30 years. This isn't the same woman. And the judge was like, oh, she's probably mentally ill. So they sent me for drug and alcohol testing. And when she said, if I tested positive for drugs or alcohol, I was going to jail. Right? I hadn't so much as the traffic ticket, David. Nothing like that. No history of any kind. But she wanted to send me to jail. So I went because she didn't believe me. And I tested negative for anything. Came right back to court, escorted by police. And that she said, well, I'm going to release you to either the mental health ward where you need to be medicated because you're obviously mentally ill, or to your ex-husband, who's promised to watch you as long as you have a full psychological evaluation within the next 7 days. If you do not do that, you are going to jail or the mental ward. Those are my choices. After 20 years of being a really good mom, a teacher, a therapist, working towards bettering the world, right? This decline that happened so gradual, but it made me look so bad. And I was labeled. And I'm like, I wasn't even cognitive enough to see the gravity of the situation. But my son's father's like, this is awful. We've got to do something. So, anyways, I sell everything I can sell to pay for this psychological evaluation because this is coming out of my stinking pocket, right? So I sell everything. I'd already gotten rid of my 401k to try to save my home. I had pretty much nothing. Sold, I think, of jewelry or furniture or something. Paid for the psychological evaluation, got through my first meeting, and the psychologist says, listen, you need to see a neurologist, and I'm going to call somebody right now before you leave, and we're going to have an appointment set up for you. You need to go. I'm like, whatever. I mean, I was cognitively not around. So my ex-husband's like, I'll get her there, don't worry. The next day, I meet with a neurologist and I go through all the tests and I say to him, I don't think there's anything wrong. If there is, it comes and goes like dementia. Do you think I have dementia? And he said, no, we need to do some tests. So we did all kinds of tests. The last test, being a sleep deprived EEG, showed that I had bilateral temporal lobe damage, which is like, I think I sent you a copy of that, of one of the tests. So he said, these are the reasons why you hear things, you see things, you smell things that aren't there, you have memory impairment, and you're walking around like you feel like you're in a dream or that like you've lived this before. And I'll tell you, David, the symptoms of having that kind of damage, they operate like an epilepsy. So you never know when it's going to happen. And it causes tremendous pain. Like my head just hurt so bad I wanted to throw up. And then I'd end up sleeping for hours and hours. But nobody knew why this was happening until I started investigating, like, what causes this? What can I do to stop it? Because I didn't have medical insurance. I didn't qualify for any state aid because I still technically owned my home, which I was losing quick. There was no way I could recover it. But regardless, I couldn't get any medical care. I couldn't get food. There was nothing that was provided to me for what was happening. I contacted everybody, even the National Epilepsy Foundation, because they said they support people who have. You know what they did? They sent me a really nice email. "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear about your circumstances. If there's any information on our site, feel free to peruse it, but we don't have any services for you." I'm like, okay, great. So none of that helped, right? Nothing. I found nothing. So I tried a couple times, was unsuccessful. And what happened was I realized I had gotten so sick that I would sleep for maybe 20, 24 hours. And then when I woke up, I felt a little bit better. But it took about a month and a half for me to figure this out. And when I felt better, I would start looking for solutions for my epilepsy. That's when I found the only thing was the keto diet for kids, but they had nothing about this diet for adults back then. Nothing. And then, so I started that and I started to feel a little bit better. And then I transitioned into keto and carnivore because I found I was eating too many things that didn't feel didn't make me feel good. And these foods were anything that, even if it had low carb, it was affecting my brain. Like I would have a seizure, but this took me, Dave, like 3 years to figure this out. 3 years to figure out the specifics for me. And then as I was figuring this crap out, now I'm finding books, I'm finding articles. I found Dr. Chris Palmer, who talked about mental illness and mitochondria and your brain. And those were the only things that I learned that I could follow were the clinical research studies. And as a science teacher and as a therapist, I know how important those things are. And you're one of the few honest to goodness people on YouTube that isn't like throwing junk out there saying, no, this isn't the right, this isn't the right, this is the only thing you can do. You're being honest, right? Because all of us are coming at this from a different metabolic state. I'd been overweight so much, so for so long in my life, I hindsight is 2020, right? So when I started losing weight on the keto diet and then on the carnivore diet and then on keto carnivore, because I was trying to balance things out. I even went just low carb. And I also threw in intermittent fasting. That was that in the beginning, that's what I thought was doing it, but it wasn't because I was still having seizures. I was still having the effects from the carbs. And even if it was no sugar, there were so many carbs in it, it would throw me off with a seizure. One of the things that's really bad is popcorn. Who would think that popcorn would give me seizures? But it does. There's so many carbs in it that my body just can't handle it. Now, that was one of the things that I had to learn for myself. So hindsight's 2020. This past April, I had decided, okay, I've seen research. I didn't know I was no longer really having the seizures. I thought I'd just been managing them better and not feeling it as much. So I thought, okay, I have my insurance now because I finally found a job. Because guess what? If you have a misdemeanor and you've been in court, you can't work with people at all. Guess who has a degree in teaching? I do. I can't even drive a school bus. They won't let you around kids at all with a misdemeanor. I couldn't work with aged. I couldn't find a job doing anything. So I got a blue collar job where I got insurance, decided I was going to see a neurologist to have an updated EEG. So when I go in to see this lady just this past April, I said, well, I have brain damage from, I think it's from low blood sugar episodes because my blood sugar would dive in the middle of the night. And I didn't even know that that's what it was until I finally tested it on my own, and it would be down in the 30s. My boyfriend, husband at the time, tested it for me in the middle of the night once. His son was a type 1 diabetic. And he's like, whoa, your blood sugar is 37. What? So, I would have something, it would come up. Well, I never thought it was diabetic, and my blood sugars never were high. But I think it was those repetitive episodes where I would become so low. I think that's what caused the temporal lobe damage, or the front, yeah, temporal lobe damage. And so I went to see the neurologist, and I said, listen, I need another EEG because I have brain damage. And she said, well, tell me your symptoms. So I told her, and she goes, I don't think you do. I think you have occipital lobe migraines, and I can give you a medication right now. And I'm like, no, because I've never been on any medication other than the first 2 months when I was first diagnosed with the brain damage to stop any seizure activity. And so I went on that for 2 months and I couldn't tolerate it. And then I didn't have insurance, so I couldn't pay for it. So she said in this past April, she said, no, you probably have that, but we'll schedule you and do an EEG and we'll see how it is. So she did, and she called me 2 weeks later and said, you don't have any brain damage. I'm like, what? And she said, you don't have epilepsy. And I said, well, can that go away? Because I didn't think it could. It's scarred brain tissue. As a therapist, I know scarred brain tissue cannot be fixed. You can go around the injury. I've done this for 20 years with my stroke patients, but you can never fix the damage. That's a thing they're working on now. And she said, no, you don't. She just thought I was some kook. And I'm like, well, I'm going to call the other doctor and have him send you the documents. And she's like, okay. So they sent him to her, and she said, I don't believe this. And I'm like, well, EEGs don't lie, and sleep deprived EEGs don't lie. But I felt, Dave, honestly, I thought, all those years going through that hell of losing everything and losing my mind, and nobody believing me, I thought, Jesus, this is happening all over again. And I said to my boyfriend, I'm like, I feel awful. And he said, don't. It's because you've been taking care of yourself. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They think I'm crazy. Do you think I'm crazy too? He said, no, you've lost 200 pounds. You're on this strict diet. You do your meditation every day. You do your exercises every day. And you try to help people get healthier. And they are. It's because you changed. I'm like, you can't change your brain. He's like, I think you can. So here I am with an EEG that shows absolutely no problems. And I haven't had those symptoms at all. In over 2 years, I know I have had zero blood sugar symptoms. I've had zero problems with my migraines, and my focus and my brain so much healthier now, mind, body, and spirit, than I ever have been. And I found it all by accident, trial and error. And the best thing I ever did was the keto carnivore diet. And even and I know people will argue, because they argue with me all the time. They argue with me all the time, even about my own seizures. They're like, well, how do you know it was a seizure? I'm like, well, you know what? Not everybody has an epileptic seizure that shake and tremble. And that's one of the key things to this kind of problem that I have. And, or I want to say had. But I believe that if I went off of my diet, I would not be well again. I think I would start having the symptoms just like I did before. Even like 2 years in, when I was really feeling better and I started to mix my diet up, like I tried Mediterranean. I tried just low carb and no sugar, and I do not eat any sugar at all. And but I noticed then that I would have seizures, even with the non-sugar things, because they had too many carbs. Even on my Mediterranean diet, because there was too much sugar in maybe some of the fruits I was eating. So I've learned that for me and for many people who were probably as metabolically impaired as I was, and beginning to have signs of prediabetes or even diabetic, once they change their diet, they really start to feel better and think more clearly. And honestly, Dave, I see people now who knew me even before I had lost everything. Like, was that middle school, high school mom that baked cookies? They don't believe I'm the same person. Honestly, they do not. They'll look at me and they'll be like, and I'll say hi to them. And they'll be like, "Are you Donna? Are you Donna Rowe?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." Like, "Wow, you look great." And they're like, thank you very much. And I do. I look so much better than I did before. When I was, I want to say when I was 40, I looked like I was 50, and now at 60, I think I look like I'm 50. You know, my hair is so much thicker. My nails, my skin is clear and vibrant. I don't always look great. I have my days, trust me, but I look better than I did 10 years ago, no doubt. No doubt. Yeah.
Congratulations. This is amazing. When your son found you that time on the bathroom floor, how old was your son at that stage?
He was 16. He was 16. He remembers it very clearly. He remembers that very clearly. Yeah.
So
Maybe he was
your
8.
son's
He's a little bit older.
so your son's obviously seen the change in you. Like
Yes.
what is your son's kind of reaction or feedback to all this happening?
My son thinks it's pretty amazing. He was like, "Mom, you're nothing like you were before. Nothing at all like you were before. You're you're a lot more vibrant. You move and you run and you exercise. I don't run like you do, but I do things to try to stay healthy, and now I can move around. I do yoga. I mean, I would have never thought. My son thought the same things. And Mom, I would have never thought you could do that. Some of the things that I can do now. Yeah. He's and he just had his first child last week. So he's like, "Mom, you're gonna be able to run and play with little Ronnie." And I'm like, "Yes, I will, and I'm gonna." And
Well, congratulations.
thank you. And even my boyfriend that I'm with now, I was with him through the whole thing. And he's like, "You really need to uh really need to talk to people about what you've been through." Because I was hesitant. I didn't want to. Because it brings you know how much kickback you get from people, right? And it brings you down, right?
Right. I mean, when you talk to people and you say, I'm only eating meat and eggs, they're like, this is insane.
Yeah. And they'll tell you how unhealthy you are, right? "Isn't your cholesterol bad?" I'm like, "Nope, nope." They don't believe you. They don't believe you.
Hmm. So on that, how are you eating day to day?
Oh, I still intermittent fast, but this last month, when I have a tooth infection. I had a broken tooth, and it became infected. So I haven't been fasting through that, but I've been just eating my regular. Like today, I have ready. I'm not going to eat until after we're done here, but I have eggs on the counter ready to go. I'm going to scramble those, and I'm going to have that with some sirloin with garlic and butter. That's my favorite thing to eat. Eggs and sirloin steak with garlic and butter. But I've figured out like a couple of other really great recipes that were, I tried a keto pizza crust, carnivore pizza crust with chicken, like canned chicken breast. And I cooked it too long and it was really kind of brittly, But wow, did that make really good nachos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
nice.
you
So
roll it
you were
out.
able to repurpose them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice. Nice. So when you say you're intermittent fasting, so basically you're only eating one meal a day?
No, what I would do is I would have like try to have two meals within a 4 hour window. So I would open my window with like a collagen drink in my coffee, and then I would have a meal and then close it with, I don't know, some meatballs or something that I really wanted. So that, and I would do that a couple times a week, like 2 times a week. If I was feeling a little bit off, I might do a whole 24 or maybe a 36-hour fast. Um, but I don't like to really do those that much. I like my 20-hour fast. And that it for me, the earlier that I do break my fast and close my window, the better I feel. Like, I did some research on circadian rhythms by Dr. Sachin Panda. He did some research with early time restricted eating. So that's what I have tried to do. Like, I try not to eat too late at night, and it helps my sleep too. Helps me sleep tremendous.
Nice. I guess, yeah, I mean, one of the big improvements you must have experienced is an improvement with sleep, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. The only
Mm.
reason I have to wake is if I have to urinate, and that's only once a night. Once at night usually. Yeah. So the sleep has really improved, and I feel better. Like, when I get up in the morning, I feel so good. I don't need an alarm clock. Um, and I don't have I don't like roll over and feel, I don't know, fatigued, I guess, in the morning. I wake up and I feel pretty energized. And that I initially thought that that was because of the yoga that I do or my meditations that I do, but I think it's everything together, to be honest. I do. Nutrition, number one. Staying off the carbs, absolutely number one. Scheduled eating along with that, especially in the beginning, was essential. And then I started yoga. I had seen a video, and I tell you, I feel about this guy that does this yoga like I do about you, and it's really endearing and sweet, because I do this DD. It's called DDPY yoga, and I didn't know that this guy used to be like one of those big time wrestler guys. I didn't know that. My boyfriend knew him because he's a big sports freak. I had just seen a video about one of the gentlemen that did his yoga, and at one point the guy was on crutches and then he's running across this field, and I'm like, I saw that video and I'm like, okay, listen, I have brain damage. I'm trying to get better. If that guy can do it and he's on crutches, I can do it with the damaged brain, right? So I signed up for this DDPY yoga, and I was embarrassed to tell like my boyfriend or my son that I was trying yoga, because I'd failed in every diet and every exercise program I'd ever done. But I started it, and I just felt like this gentleman and his instructors they just come at it from their heart. You can tell that they just are genuine, like you are, and they want to help people. Sure, the guy's got an app. Sure, the guy's got the exercise program, but I believe, and he really comes off as sincere, and I will always do his yoga. I even do it at work, and I work in blue collar. Like, I'm at a factory and I'll be on the dock and I'll be doing my yoga during my break, rather than, a lot of people are out smoking their cigarettes or whatever. And I'm so out of place in that work environment, that they they're real nice. They're over nice to me because I remind them all of their mom. So yeah, so I do that yoga. I do my meditation. I started doing meditation. thanks to like Eckhart Tolle, when I was super, super sick, I had come home and I was looking for answers in anything. And I saw this quick meditation and I thought, I'll try anything to just feel better and not be so sad and so, ugh. And I did it and I didn't mind it. And then as I cleared and became more healthy, I followed some of his advice and signed up for one of his courses, and they gave me a scholarship. I didn't have to pay for it because I didn't have any money, and I was able to take a course of his and learn how to meditate. So I've been doing that now. I kind of do my own thing with that, but I think it's all together. But nutrition, number one, stay away from those carbs. Good. I mean, we need meat. We just do. That's how my brain works now. And the exercise, the fasting, which I do, and my meditation.
Do you ever have the moments these days where you kind of, you're shaking your head and thinking, how did I escape such a dark place?
Yes. Yes, I do. I do. I actually feel guilty about it sometimes. Mhm. I do. And I say often, oh my God, I don't know why I'm here. I shouldn't be here because I did not want to be here.
Just feeling like you've got everyone against you and
Oh, yeah. That was awful because even my workmates, as an occupational therapist, I worked in an office with other therapists and I was sliding downhill while I was working in that facility. I was losing my grip on reality until I was finally fired. And my whole existence, my whole friend network was the people I worked with because I was working 10 years of research on my own with what we call PNF patterns, proprioceptive muscle facilitation patterns, in geriatric patients with senior Tai Chi. And I was trying to increase stand balance with a group of people at a couple different facilities. So I was doing that on the side, but reporting all these wonderful findings to my workmates. And I was, I mean, that was my life. And then when everything fell apart and I got fired, nobody wanted to talk to me. Nobody. They thought, oh, she's crazy. We want nothing to do with her. She's absolutely nuts crazy. And it was heartbreaking. But I was so sick, Dave, that I didn't see how bad that was until I was out of it. And when I turn around and look at that past, it really feels like a rebirth. People talk about those spiritual awakenings or whatever, and I listened to a lot of stuff. I mean, I even heard Dr. Wayne Dyer speak at Wayne State. That was my alma mater. I was an undergraduate and he had come and he was speaking about manifestation and spirituality, and that was back in the early thousands and 90s. And I couldn't grasp any of it. I thought I wasn't good enough for it. I thought I wasn't trying hard enough. I thought I was a failure. And all of that, just your brain will latch onto that. And when all of those people that I worked with and my friends, who I thought were friends, turned away, and then I healed, I realized it was a rebirth. The people that are with me now are the people who I can always count on, right? So no matter how sick I am, no matter what happens, they taught me what love and companionship and true friendship is. Now I've had people that I did work with, like I left them on my friends list on Facebook because I just didn't want to be that small person to say, oh, they were like this. I'm not going to, I'm going to block them. Mm-mm. I didn't do that. And I've had a few of those people reach out to me. One girl recently apologized for how cruel they were. And you know what? I wasn't aware of how cruel they were. I just knew that they ignored me. I didn't know that they made jokes about me and were that terrible when we were working with people who were demented. I would hope that if I were in that situation, that I would not have behaved that way. I would hope that I wouldn't. And I've never um, been mean to any of the people that were like that to me. No. But it does make me concerned. That's such a good question because the legal system, how that worked, because of how I looked and my appearance as a homeless person and that mentally ill, they didn't think, oh, this is a lady who's been working with kids. She's a teacher. She's a this, she's a that. She lives in that decent house. She drives, she's a nice person. She used to make cakes for my kids at school. She used to tutor my cousin. I mean, they didn't think that. They automatically, it within seconds, had judged me as mentally ill, needing to go to jail, criminal, needing to go to jail, a substance abuse. So, how many of us, Dave, are in jail? How many of us are medicated in a mental institution, or even worse than that, in a senior living facility with dementia, Alzheimer's, any kind of cognitive impairment, and on medication that alters your thinking? So, even if they do get better, you wouldn't know it because the medication makes them crazy. That gives me shivers. That gives me shivers. Mm. And I think there are many, many, many women like me that have been through what I've been through, maybe not to the point of how extreme mine got, but I bet there are mood disorders, right? Temper tantrums, impulsiveness, and depressive syndromes, anxiety, uh, you name it. A lot of these things can be diagnosed. And recently, I found Dr. Chris Palmer's book on, I think it's called Brain Energy. I mean, I have the book, but it's about mental illness and nutrition and how he noticed by accident he had a patient who was schizophrenic, I think, and he had some real severe mental problems, diagnoses for years and years. And he was able to really turn his life around with simple diet and some medication, I think. But his case is significant in that it propelled that particular physician to really look at diet as a treatment protocol. And I think for him, it's a more keto than carnivore, but he eats very few carbs and prescribes few as well. So, yeah, it gives me the shivers. It really does. How many people? How many people? And I'll talk to anybody. Like I went on Facebook, and I don't do this anymore because it was causing me anxiety. I went on Facebook because I felt like I was pre-diabetic and my blood sugar problem caused the damage to my brain. And so I went on different sites. I joined all these groups of women to help each other, counsel each other. And I got a lot of blowback for saying, listen, I changed my life with just my diet. I'm not on anti-seizure medication and I haven't had a seizure and I can prove it, right? But oh my gosh, the people would get so mad and they would argue with me about my own experience. And I'm like, why are you arguing? You can just try it. Stay on your medication, but try a nutritional approach. And they wouldn't. So I just stopped. I just completely stopped all the groups. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. I will build an army of people who want to work together to get this information out any way we can.
If you had someone come to you and say, "Look, okay, you've obviously improved things about your life. Your weight's better. You know, you don't have those same brain issues that you were having. How do I get started with carnivore? What would you recommend?"
Well, I tell them number one, to start slow. And I would tell them that the first 30 days are going to be the hardest. But once you're over that first 30 days, it's so much easier. And you're not going to be hungry for those weird foods that you used to eat. And I have counseled some people that I have met or that want to get started that are my age in their 50s. And I say, listen, this is what you're going to do. You're going to get rid of all the junk food and you're going to get rid of all the sugar and you're going to just start slowly with things that you like. Here are a few recipes. Let's get started. And slowly they do. The people that stick with it, they'll get started, they'll start feeling better, and then that fuels them. I show them this and tell them this. Like with my EEG, I have showed this to two people, friends that I've had that have started a carnivore diet, and they've been very successful. So I showed them, I said, listen, when I went in for my second EEG, I tried to eat the same exact way I did before I had my first EEG. But the food to me was disgusting when before it was my favorites, because when you do the EEG, you can't sleep and you can't have coffee. And I was a big caffeine drinker, coffee drinker, tea, you name it. And so I had to stay up that 24 to 30 hours. And I had scheduled food around it, like all my favorite foods, as long as they didn't have any caffeine. So there was no chocolate. So I had like the vanilla Oreos. I had the Twinkie type cakes, not Twinkies, but the raspberry ones. I had toast with jam. I mean, you name it, all that stuff that you can't eat, cake, pound cake, pie, you name it. Well, when I tried to do that the second time, the food was so terrible. I didn't even want it. And it was the same stuff. And my boyfriend was laughing at me. He said, do you buy all this stuff for, I can't believe you bought this food. I'm like, I got to stay up all night. I want to go into this EEG just like I went into the other one. Because if I'm going to have to file for disability down the line, I'm going to have to show that I've had these seizures for this long. And I haven't had an EEG in years. So since 2019, and it was 2024 when I had the last one. So I tell them, you're not even going to like that food anymore. Trust me, because that's what happened to me. It is. You're not even going to be hungry for it. Even if it was your favorite thing, like the pizza or whatever, your brain might say, I want to try that, but you're not going to be hungry for it. You're going to be hungry for steak and you're going to be hungry for eggs and you're going to be hungry for those types of foods and they're going to satisfy you. And then you're going to realize what a hold food really had on you. And you're going to start doing other things. You're going to get an activity you like. You're going to be more productive outside. Your life is going to open up. It's not going to be shrouded by that. You're not going to be captured by the food that you used to eat. And they don't believe you. Sometimes you lose people just with that. But that's usually what I say.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll lose people, but and that's just because until they've experienced it, they can't understand, right?
Oh, it's so true. So true. It's like when you have kids, right? You can say, "Oh, it's a love like you can never love anything like you do when you have a child." You know, they don't believe you until they have one. They're like, "Okay, now I know what you mean." Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I do.
Yeah. So Donna is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, and I do counsel people like my local community center because I had to move. I lost my house. So when I moved, I went to the local community center and I said, is there a group of people here that like to meet, like a support group, people for maintaining weight and exercise to try different things, look at researched activities for people over a certain age. Because most of the people in my community center are my age, like 60 or over. And so we started meeting, and some of those ladies are like, "What do you do? How do you stay so thin?" Right? And I'm like, then when I tell them that I used to weigh almost 200 pounds more than I do today. And I was extremely unhealthy and pre-diabetic. They're like, what? And then we go from there. So I helped a lot of ladies get started. They don't always go strict carnivore, but they are leaning towards it. And what I've noticed is this too. Once you start that keto diet, it's so easy to transition into carnivore. And if they don't like the carnivore, they can just stay in keto and it seems to be okay for them because maybe they weren't as metabolically ill as I was. I actually saw a video about that the other day by a doctor that does some stuff, and he was talking to somebody about that was very anti-carnivore. That was, oh, your cholesterol is going to go up. Oh, your triglyceride levels are going to go through the roof. Oh, you're going to have a heart attack. That kind of guy. And he said, you know what? Those statements are untrue. However, it might not be a good diet for him because maybe he was never really that ill and didn't really need to change the way he eats. And I've noticed that too with some of the YouTube people that I had seen in the beginning, like um, Dr. Jason Fung. I love him. He was one of the first people I heard speak about intermittent fasting. And then Thomas DeLauer, Dr. Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, all those guys, like way back when, they were all like carnivore, keto, intermittent fasting. And then they switched their recommendation for themselves. They're like, this is why I stopped doing it, or this is why I stopped eating keto, or this is why I stopped carnivore. And thinking about their reasons why and their bodies, they'd always been pretty healthy, right? These people weren't, they didn't do metabolic, they didn't, I don't know, they weren't like obese for a long period of time. They didn't eat unhealthy. They might have been have some cereal or whatever, but they're generally pretty healthy people active. So they can transition back and be fine. But I cannot. I know I cannot. I do better if I stick with keto or carnivore. And research, right? Research with the keto diet has really shown that is a case for epilepsy. So if an epileptic injured brain does better on that diet, then my brain would. And my test results prove that my diet definitely helped my brain heal. How? I don't know.
So, Donna, is there a way that people can reach out to you? Do you have any social media or a way of getting in contact?
You can email me at mybraindiet at google.com, at gmail, I mean, .com, if you want me to talk to you or anything. Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to anybody who's eager to change, eager to look for anything to help them stop their seizures or their metabolic syndrome. I'll do anything. I think that's why I'm here, because I shouldn't be here. The things I did to not be here, yeah, I shouldn't be here.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, no worries. I'll put your email in the show notes.
Okay.
Donna, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time and
You're
so happy you're
welcome.
doing well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it is a true honor to meet you. I'm just over the moon happy.